Awesome. This is another episode of Fourth String Podcast. Ben, who we found out last week doesn't actually watch college football, will not be on tonight. He is out this week, which it's a weird week because of Labor Day. Normally we're on Sunday at 8:30, but he's not on. So I have got the esteemed pleasure, and it really couldn't have come at a better time considering the best win in the history of the sport last night was Duke just pounding Clemson. So I have got Jordan Mann from the Big J and Little J show, and he's a basketball guy, Sue was telling me. He's from Ferrum. He went to Ferrum. I, by the way, grew up about 15 minutes from Ferrum. We're probably the only two people on here that know about Ferrum, which is fine, but he's from Ferrum. Basketball guy that runs the Duke Football Fans account. So, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, anytime I can talk Duke football, I'll always take that opportunity, and especially after a top 10 wins. This is the first time in my lifetime that's happened. I'm 29 years old, so I've been basically one of the team. It feels like I just watched. I've watched. It's like they won the national championship, and I'm just watching this on repeat on YouTube and ESPN. I'm just taking it all in.
Dude, last night, I mean, I was telling you this earlier, like, I have been a Duke football fan, and some of it, I'll admit, I've been a closeted Duke football fan until Cutcliffe was hired, but I mean, like, literally going back to, like, Duke would be like 1-10, and they didn't play 12 games back then, 1-10, and their win would be against a VMI. I remember they kept it close against East Carolina, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so to go from that, which doesn't feel like that long ago, to the Cutcliffe era, which ended on a pretty sour note, to literally this in 2 years, it's one of the most remarkable turnarounds I can ever remember for any football program. And to be sitting there last night and watch Duke do this to Clemson, like, Jordan, I got to be honest, I know about all the turnovers and stuff, and like we can talk about it being an ugly game, but from the get-go, Duke made it obvious, dude, we're going to make this a physical game. We're going to punch you in the mouth. We're bringing our defensive heat. You are going to feel this on every single play. And for Duke to even have the talent to do that, much less prove it on the field, I mean, Mike Elko's got to be in the running for Coach of the Year. And I know it's week 1, so we're all about overreactions here. But, dude, he has done a number on this team that I don't think anybody saw coming.
Yeah, he won ACC Coach of the Year last year. He didn't win National Coach of the Year, did he? He was runner up, maybe.
I can't remember. I think he was in the running for ACC Coach of the Year, but I'm not sure that he won it.
He won ACC Coach of the Year last year.
Okay,
and that was a hot topic for Florida State fans. They thought Mike Bell deserved it. But when you go from 3 wins to 9 wins year one at Duke, I don't care how the schedule is, then you deserve it. And he did a great job there. And yeah, like you said, I mean, I haven't seen Duke be this physical against a superior top of. I mean, it's who every ACC team wants to be. They want to be Clemson. Like,
yeah,
they've ran the ACC for a decade plus now, and for Duke to show they can go sideline to sideline, like you throw swing passes, they're going to be out in the flats. If you're going to, Shipley had like their O-line did really well running the ball. Like it seemed like Shipley they gashed Duke, but that also had to deal with Duke's offense in the third quarter could not maintain a drive, not even a first down. Besides Riley's touchdown, it seemed like Clemson had the ball for 11 of the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But when it came to passing, man, like Santucci, the new defense coordinator from Texas A&M, did an outstanding job. His first game as a defensive coordinator, he was co-DC at Texas A&M. So first time he's calling plays against the number 9 team, and his secondary's flying around. A lot of PBUs and 7 points. You give up 7 points. I know Clemson had a sloppy game, but so did Duke. And like if it wasn't for a botched punt return inside the red zone, then we're possibly talking about a shutout that Duke had against Clemson.
Yeah, and that was a major mistake by Jalen Calhoun. Which the reason why I bring that up because Jalen Calhoun had 2 big mistakes last night. I think Riley Leonard had a couple of just. You're kind of sweating it when he releases the ball type passes, like just some really bad decisions. And to look at that game and watch all that stuff happen, where I thought Duke with the false starts, with the holding penalties and all that stuff, and they win by 3 touchdowns against Clemson, it's like, dude, if you can clean up some of the penalties and some of just the bonehead plays, like, is Duke a legit ACC contender now? I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but I mean, even Clemson, as bad as they may be, as much as they've fallen off the map, it's not like they're going to finish worse than fourth in the conference, right? So if you
Right.
do that to the fourth best team in the conference, I mean, can Duke compete with the Florida State? Can they knock off a UNC?
Yeah, I mean, I have said notoriously, or maybe not notoriously. It's been week one has done me justice, but I had my season preview for Duke that Duke could go 10-2 with the schedule that Duke has, and this was I had a loss for Clemson, so I had lost to Clemson and Florida State. I just really believe in this team to where you return year two under the same regime, and you return every senior that was supposed to graduate because of the COVID years and stuff. And then, oh, by the way, a late portal addition, Jeremiah Lewis came back to Duke from Northwestern when Fitzgerald was fired. So you get even more experience in the secondary. And I think this Duke team can run the table in the ACC.
I think it's really interesting, and I don't doubt it. So let's talk about elephant in the room, Mike Elko. Like, I love him. I think the Bill Snyder at Kansas State route, and it's easy for me to say this because I am a Duke fan, so I'm totally biased. I think that route as a head coach is a whole lot more attractive to the Hugh Freeze to let's get the next best job route type thing, and like what Lane Kiffin did early on in his career. Like, I think if you can establish yourself as I'm building up this program, I'm going to be the heart and soul of this program, much like Coach K did with Duke basketball. I love that route as a head coach, but I think Mike Elko is going to have a bunch of offers at the end of the year. I think what's really interesting is that in the stands last night is Steve Spurrier. You can't help but notice the last time Duke beat a top 10 team, it was Clemson in 1989. Their head coach, Steve Spurrier, who then went to Florida. And there's a lot of talk that Billy Napier is not going to be the head coach at Florida. And that's just one of many possible openings. So I guess the question is does Mike Elko, I mean, how long is he going to stick this thing out? Because I'd love to see him stay at Duke. But let's not make no mistake. They don't have the facilities, the cash to keep a coach like that around long term unless he is just 100% all in. So your heart of hearts, you think he's staying, or do you think he bolts at a big SEC job?
So with Elko, I honestly think I don't know what it would take for him. He's been open. He's talked. I listened to him on the Adam Brenneman show, and he said that he's had job before he took Duke, and through his coaching career, he's had multiple jobs that's offered him way more money that he's turned down because he's looking for a certain fit that fits his personality and his character. So I think if it is a big job, it's got to fit who he truly is. And I think he's kind of cut from the same. Him and Dave Clawson have a background together. Clawson was his first boss in college football.
That's right. Yeah.
Forever. And I really think they have a very similar mindset that because Clawson has won a lot of games at Wake. They went to the AC championship game. He's done a heck of a job with them, and he's had job offers, I'm sure, that haven't been public that he's turned down in private. And I really think Elko is cut from that same cloth. So it has to be the right fit. It won't be like a Brian Kelly, if you will, like, hey, this big school is open. I'm a hop from Notre Dame to LSU. Like, I'm sure if fits him culturally and fits who he is as a person, then I would not be surprised if he left. But I wouldn't be too worried if it's a hot job that everybody wants, or he's like, probably not because of boosters or just distractions or honestly just a bunch of other factors.
Yeah, well, I think that Florida job, like the capacity in terms of the resources that you get, it's obviously through the roof.
Correct.
But do you want to deal with the boosters and the fan expectations and everything that comes with having the Florida job? Because the one thing about the Duke job is you put together a 10-win season, they'll build a statue of you. Like, I mean, and I just think Duke fans will be forever. I mean, even after last night, I think every Duke fan feels completely indebted to Mike Elko for like forever. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, it's like, oh, yeah, we really appreciate what Cutcliffe did. But what Mike Elko's done is on a completely different level. And it's game one of year two. And this is how he's turned the program around. So I'm fascinated with it. We're going to come back to Duke in a little bit. And I'm going to give you guys my new top 10 here in just a minute. I've got some, of course, because it's a fourth string podcast, some sweeping overreactions. So you're going to see some major movement in my top 10. I want to talk about Colorado for a moment because that was the other big game of the weekend was Colorado knocking off TCU. And I've got a couple of thoughts with it. One, Jordan, I don't know about you, but the only player I can think of that Travis Hunter reminds me of is Bo Jackson. And no, not like as physically strong as Bo, but in terms of like versatility and just absolute freak show, he's it. He played 135 snaps on Saturday, and he caught the winning, or he caught like the pass that put Colorado over the top. In the fading moments of that game, for him to have the energy to even be out there for that many snaps in that heat to catch that big of a pass, it's one of the most amazing things I think I've ever seen from an individual college football player, maybe ever.
Yeah, he's Travis Hunter. I watched that whole game, and he is crazy. I mean, I guess my only comparison I could have is with his head coach. Like when Deion went to the Cowboys, one of the contract negotiations were that he wanted to play receiver too. So he played receiver, DB, and punt returner. And that year he only had like 36 catches. I mean, I wouldn't say only. He still was in the NFL at 36 catches for like 300 some yards and a touchdown. But like Travis Hunter, he got a third of that, it seems like, in week one with 11 catches. And that, I mean, he's a true talent, and kudos to him. Like he wasn't really good at Jackson State and then a decent Power 5 guy. He is the best Power 5 two-way guy. He's Shohei Ohtani. He's the best. He's a Power 5 Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. And I mean, to your point, Deion played both sides of the ball and then also played baseball in his spare time and made it to the majors, which is more than even Jordan did. So I mean, like, Travis Hunter's on another level. And I think it's amazing. Like, there's all this talk about, did Deion build this thing the right way? Like I was at game day on Saturday, and Lee Corso's talking about how he doesn't appreciate the way Deion's built this thing. I got news for you. A head coach has one obligation: win. Right? Mm-hmm. Win without crossing any ethical barriers. There's no ethical barrier kicking players who don't meet the standard of your football team off and replacing them with guys that do. So hats off to him. I've got a big concern about Deion long term, because I mean, like, I'm listening to all the stuff this morning, and like, I swear to God, Colin Cowherd was about ready to crown him like the next Nick Saban. Like, okay, let's hold off on this thing. Like, Deion right now is like really, really cool. It's like when I was 20, I had a Mazda RX-8, really, really fun car. I mean, just an amazing car, super fast. The problem is when it hit 100,000 miles, the engine blew up. Like, it was great until the engine blew up, and then it wasn't great anymore. And Deion right now is really, really cool. But I can't decide if he's a Mazda RX-8 or if he's like a Mustang and it's going to last a while also being really cool. And I have, honestly to God, like, I've got no idea. But I think right now, every player wants to go play for Deion. Even if they don't want to, they want to at least go meet Deion. So he's getting in living rooms other coaches can't get into. My concern is, if you're a Florida, which would be fascinating if Florida went and hired him. I mean, with the stuff between him and Florida State over the past week or so, if Florida hired him, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
But if you're a major college team and you go hire Deion after what he's done in 1 year at Florida or at Colorado, when does it wear off? And does he have another gear? Because I'm not, like, I think it's great. I think he's gritty, but I've not seen another gear from him other than just he's really, really cool. And I think a lot of these head coaches, like Mike Elko, who we're talking about, Mike Elko is kind of boring. Like, he's boring. He's got a simplistic game plan, but he's great at the details. He's great at the fundamentals. Same thing with Nick Saban, just fundamentals to death. Harbaugh he's weird, but he's boring. Right? Same thing with Dabo, just weird and boring. And so Deion's not boring at all. He's really, really cool, but I don't know how long and how sustainable what he's building at Colorado is, although I think this year they're going to be really, really good. Like, they're ranked in the top 25. I've got no problem with it. They feel like a top 25 team. But beyond this year, can he continue to recruit? Can he continue to build that roster? I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Deion is Deion. Like he's always been the same guy who he is showing as a coach. And like that was as talented as we said his accolades were in the NFL and MLB and stuff. Like he was a very much so of a head case behind closed doors to GMs and to teammates because he's like, I'm not playing the first 4 games of the NFL season. I'm playing baseball. So like the locker room would be mad at him, but then he'd come and produce and then flip it for baseball. I'm gonna miss these games because I got NFL. But he always has been flashy, but I think that's what makes him truly unique and one of one is he's in his playing career, he always backed it up. And so at Jackson State, he backed it up. I know they lost to Central in the championship game this past like last year, but I tell you what, man, I like it that he's different, and I like that he is true to himself, even if it is just blunt and almost over, just too much. Like he just overdoes it. But that's true. That's honestly, it's just who he is, and I definitely understand why people don't like it because, like you said, coaching. One thing about head coaches, they have a certain demeanor, even if they're very colorful. When it comes to like press and stuff, they're very even keel and very like mild mannered. And with him, you just never know what you're going to get when he opens his mouth. And from an entertainment standpoint, for those type of people, they love it. But obviously, for other people, it's different. And I don't know. To answer your question, I truly don't know where this is going to go, like with him in this journey. But I do appreciate him staying true to himself of being just outlandish because that's who he is. And if he ever changed, then that's where I'm like eyebrow raising, like what's really going on behind closed doors. But he goes to bat for his guys. Like he's been saying, Travis Hunter's been the best player in the country since Jackson State, and even I was like a little skeptical. I was like, all right, let me see what Travis Hunter does. And that interception that he had was just absolutely insane.
Like came out of nowhere.
Yeah, like he was that wasn't his guy. That was a linebacker's guy, but he read it and jumped off his man and just played the ball. And he just I kind of am pulling for Deion, but they played like the top 5 toughest schedule in the country. So like their win-loss total was 3 or 3.5. And TCU was not one of them. They were 21-point dogs. So I'm curious if they go like 6-6. That's an outstanding year with the schedule they play. But
to replace 85 players and go 6-6 would be insane.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, again, long term, I don't know what we're going to see with Deion, but he is absolutely the greatest gift to college football. I mean, we have a team now out west in like the Mountain Time Zone that might be the most interesting team in college football to watch. Like it might blow up. They might get absolutely crushed. They could be down 60-0. And I still want to watch that game because Deion on the sidelines and Deion in a press conference it's the most entertaining thing I've ever seen. So yeah, no, I'm excited to watch it regardless of what happens. And I think the Pac-12 this year, we're going to talk about this in a minute. The Pac-12 might legitimately be better than the SEC.
Yeah, that's a hot take. But I don't mind that. Like the more I think about it, that's not like a crazy thing to say. I mean, it really isn't. But
no, I mean, I think it's deeper. I think you got more playoff potential teams. I think you've got everybody had their eye on USC. I think USC might be the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference now. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's get into our top 10. So I've got a top 10. Jordan wasn't prepped for this. So do you have a top 10? If no is the answer, that's okay.
I do not have a top 10.
That's okay. You can just critique mine, which is totally cool. Ben, I'm sure will send in his crappy list later on, and we'll look at that sometime. At number 10, I have Utah. They were 10th last week. I'm not moving them. I want to see this team with Cam Rising at quarterback. I thought the offense against Florida, I don't think it looked bad. It started off really well, but until we see Cam Rising at quarterback, I don't think we truly know what we're getting with Utah. It'll be interesting to see if we get that this week. At number 9, everybody can sell them. That's fine, but I've got LSU. First 3 quarters of that game, it was back and forth with Florida State. I think that game told me that Florida State's a whole lot better than we thought than saying LSU is really overrated. I don't think LSU was overrated. I still think they're a good football team. I think they're going to have a really good year. I would not be shocked if they found a way to win the SEC West. So I'm not selling my stock in them yet. 8th is Ohio State. Ohio State had some really big offensive issues going into this week against Indiana. That I projected would happen. I think if you look at Ryan Day, he's had multiple years of 5-star quarterbacks. This is the first year he doesn't have a 5-star quarterback. My question was going to be, could Brian Hartline and Ryan Day right the ship on this offense? They could not. And Virginia Tech fans will tell you all you need to know about Brian Hartline, and that Ohio State offense looked absolutely putrid for about 3/4 of that game. Now, the other thing I will say is beating Indiana 31-3 on the opening week, that rings alarms. But if they had done that week 6, I don't think anybody would bat an eye. So I'm not going to take this, I'm not going to put too much stock into it, but the concern I had with Ohio State was their offense, and I felt validated in that over the weekend. 7th is USC. I know they crushed Nevada. I know they crushed San Jose State. The offense is going to score a bunch of points. The defense is still terrible. It's one of the worst defenses in the country. And you're looking at this Pac-12 now where I've got not just Utah, not just Bo Nix in Oregon, not just Michael Penix in Washington, but now I've got Colorado. And Oregon State looked really good over the weekend. That USC defense is going to have multiple games this year. They're going to allow 40-plus points. And the difference is Oregon State, Washington, Oregon, and Utah all have good defenses to go with their offense. That will be trouble for USC going down the stretch. 6th is Washington. And I didn't have them in my top 10, so this is my biggest mover of the week. But I watched them play that Boise State game. Boise State's a good G5 team. They're not bad. And Washington absolutely crushed them on every inch of that game. The defense is legit. Michael Penix might be a dark horse, maybe not even a dark horse at this point to win the Heisman. So I would not be shocked to see Washington. We get to week 12, and Washington's right there in that playoff mix. 5th is Florida State. They absolutely blew the doors off of LSU. I think that's a big win. They're going to have to play Notre Dame late in the year. That I think is going to be a really interesting game for them. And I think getting through Clemson, like I know Clemson played a bad week 1 game, but at the same time, Clemson's going to be really hungry in that game to prove themselves. That's not a team you want to play when they're that hungry. And you look at the ACC now, like UNC, I was at that game. UNC's got their secondary still sucks, but the pass rush is top 3 in the conference. Duke has a good team. So Florida State's going to be tested. I think they're right there on the border of getting into the playoff. 4th, Notre Dame. The offensive line, I think, is probably the best or second best offensive line in the country. They've got Sam Hartman in at quarterback. He knows what he's doing. It's just a really, really good offense, which Notre Dame hasn't had for years. So I think they're right there in the playoff, and I think a legitimate contender to go win a championship. 3rd is Georgia. The offense did not look great. We mentioned last week, could this team come out of the gate without Stetson Bennett and pick up where they left off? I think they're missing Stetson Bennett. I think they're missing big-time playmakers they had on this offense they don't have a year ago. I think Jalen Carter on that defense, they're missing him too. You just can't keep having 10 to 15 guys go into the NFL every offseason and tell me they're irreplaceable. They're not. And so Georgia's still great. They're still going to be in the playoff mix, but they've got to figure out some things between now and when they really ramp up their SEC play. Number 2 is Alabama. I think they look like one of the most complete teams over the week. I know they didn't really play a great opponent, but this is exactly what Nick Saban wanted to build out. And Jalen Milroe is an amazing quarterback, top 10 in the country. Number 1, Michigan. Michigan did exactly what I thought they would do against East Carolina. They dominated the game defensively, or defensively, as now Jim Harbaugh likes to say. I think they're the most complete team in college football. They're the only team I came out of this week and I said, I don't really know what the question mark is on Michigan. Quarterback is great. Running back game is great. Defense is maybe the best defense in the country. They feel like right now the best team in the country. So there's my updated top 10. Jordan, you're welcome to critique that and tell me where I'm wrong.
Honestly, I think that's a pretty solid top 10. I mean, obviously, The only thing I'd say is Georgia hasn't done anything necessarily to lose the number one spot. But I mean, I see what you're saying, but it's tough to tell the back-to-back defending champs you're not number one until obviously they get knocked off the throne. But everything else, I mean, it makes sense. Like I can definitely see your point of view.
Cool. Awesome. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I had Clemson 4th last week. So just
Really. Where do you have them at this week in your top 25?
22nd.
22nd. Okay. Where do you have Duke?
I've got Duke at 19th.
I would love to have that in your top 10. I would love to see one beside Duke's name. I think I've seen that once in my life for like a week, right when the college football playoff had their top 25 standings. I think it was like week 7 of like 2015.
I feel like where were they ranked when they went into the Chick-fil-A Bowl against Johnny Manziel?
I think they were 21. I think
were they? Okay.
Yeah, I think because I think they were maybe they're 23. Maybe they were 20 or 21 against Florida State in the AC Championship game, lost obviously by 45-7. And then I think thankfully they were like, just drop them a couple places so it'll still be a top 25 matchup with Johnny Manziel. Yeah. So I think it's like 23rd.
No, I thought Duke yesterday. I thought they really looked the part. I've got UNC ranked 16th, by the way.
Yeah, they look
I will tell you, after 10th, I think it's a complete crap show where you're going to put teams. Everybody's got a major question mark. My big question mark with Duke, honestly, was just the discipline. You can't. I mean, I think they got away with a lot of stuff yesterday. You can't get away with in a normal game like that. They've got to clean that stuff up during the Lafayette game. They can't come out. I think it's Notre Dame on September 30th.
Yep.
They cannot come out September 30th, make 5-6 major mistakes and come away, even making that game close. But if they can clean up some of that stuff, I mean, Duke's in for a really good year. All right, so we're going to bring this back. This segment Ben and I did a while ago, and I want to bring it back. I think it's really interesting. So we've got our BS meter. Okay. So I'm going to run through some things. Jordan's going to give me his thoughts. I'm going to give you my thoughts. But here's where you can rank them. You can rank it as a cold, hard truth. So no BS at all. You can rank it as some of both, a little bit of truth, a little bit of BS, or you can rank this as complete. The statement I'll give you is complete BS. So I've got 9 statements to run through. Jordan, you give me your thoughts first. I'll give you mine second. Here's the first. Brian Kelly can't win a national championship.
That's a good one right off the bat. I would say, what's the middle one again?
Some of both. Some BS, some truth.
I don't know if I could even say that because that feels like I'm giving you no real answer. I'm just going to say complete BS. I'll go there. And I just think that he proved they get to the national championship with Notre Dame. I know he didn't win with Notre Dame, but they went to the college football playoff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they went to the playoff.
And they played in the BCS national championship before the college football playoff. That's what I'm thinking of. He didn't win that, but I mean, that team was with what that roster was like to even get Notre Dame to there was impressive. And I think he's in year 2 at LSU, and they thought it would be a longer turnaround than basically he overachieved year 1. So that's why week 1 this year seems like such a low blow, but really he's still ahead of schedule with LSU. And I think he could win a national championship. If Les Miles won one at LSU, I'm pretty sure I'd like to
if Ed Orgeron won one, he can win one there.
True. Yes. 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to go complete BS here as well. I know they lost to Florida State. I don't even think it's out of the picture for LSU to win it this year. That was a weird game. It was back and forth. LSU made a couple mistakes, just kind of unraveled there at the end. I don't think it's indicative of LSU's potential this year. Now, I think they got to clean up a lot of stuff. I just do. And I think Jaden Daniel, look, dude, in key moments, there were about 3 passes in that third quarter. It just can't happen. Cannot happen. So they've got to clean up some stuff. But that team is so talented. And again, just keep in mind, it's Brian Kelly in year 2. He's got to clean up a lot of stuff that Ed Orgeron left behind. This is not an overnight rebuild. So I know there's a lot of people overreacting to that. I'm not going to. Let's go to the second one. You'll like this one. Clemson's run is over.
Oh, man. I think that's in the middle. So the reason why is that I think it could be complete BS is, well, I think there's some truth to it, is because Dabo said after the game when questioned about Garrett Riley, said, well, he came to Clemson to run Clemson's offense. And that is scary because Clemson didn't hire Garrett Riley to run Clemson's offense. They hired him to run his offense. I mean, he made TCU go to the college football playoff and the national championship. I know they got waxed by Georgia, but that team started the year unranked. Max Duggan was the backup quarterback. And
we both had them projected to finish last in the Big 12 last year. Like before the season started, they looked awful. And then for them to come out and do what they did, it was 100% because of Garrett Riley.
Yeah, and for him to have the backup quarterback go to run the table and then play in the national championship, I don't care what the score was, they made national championship, is incredible. And so there's some truth to it if Dabo's arrogance stays in the way and his ego can't move aside. But if it moves aside and lets Garrett Riley do his thing, then I think it could be BS because that guy is a genius. Let him run what he runs. Get out of the way, Dabo. You're a wide receivers coach.
Well, no, I think this is some of both for me. I mean, look, we've seen you don't win 2 national championships and then completely forget how to coach football. Dabo still knows how to coach. He's still a good coach. Clemson can still be the dynasty they've been. But Dabo over the past few years, he's gotten really into Dabo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's gotten weird. And like the whole, I'm not going to do the transfer portal and we're not going to get into NIL. Like that's fine, but you can't be rigid when it comes to the X's and O's of your team. And you've got to be willing to give some of this up. You can't bring in Garrett Riley and continue to run the same pitter-patter offense that you run the past 3 years. It's got to change. So I think it's complete BS if Dabo is willing to change. But I think this is cold hard truth. If Dabo's going to continue to put out the same product he's put out the past 3 years, yesterday needed to be a wake-up call.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, to go off of that, do you, like, where does Dabo draw a line? Like, when do we start thinking Dabo could be like maybe he is like a Coach O to where he won national championship with dudes. Like, he wasn't really X's and O's. It was dudes, and then they had the talent. Because Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson were already studs going into Clemson. It wasn't like he developed them. They were studs from the jump. And so my question is now, like, you start losing your integral core slowly but surely, like piece by piece, coordinators and players, and then it's just Dabo, because they kind of saw this with Cutcliffe. Like, once that 2013-14 started fading away, and then he started hiring within, which Dabo did last year and exposed Dabo, he quickly hired Garrett Riley, but then kind of hired in-house when he's like, well, I hired you to run my offense. It's like, no, I'm trying to get out of this cult. I'm not trying to be a part of your cult. I'm trying to get out of it.
Yeah.
So I just am worried that maybe Dabo could be in the same talks as Coach O he won national championships with dudes, but now he has decent guys, but his ego is too much in the way to where he can't do anything about it.
Well, I don't think Ed O's ego ever really came in the way. I just think he wasn't that smart of a coach.
I love Coach O.
Yeah. But Dabo's ego is 100% the issue right now. I mean, that Clemson team, like maybe it's not as talented as the team from 2019 with Trevor Lawrence. It's still a pretty darn talented team.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make the argument that Duke is good enough to go toe-to-toe with Clemson. I love Duke. Beating them by 3 touchdowns, Duke isn't that good. And so that tells you there are real issues with Clemson. And the problems last night is Clemson just wasn't buttoned up. The offense actually moved the ball. I think Clemson outgained Duke, didn't they? They have over 400 yards of offense.
They outgained them, and it really had to do with, like I said, that third quarter where Duke just kept going 3 and out, and then Clemson kept getting the ball. But, yeah, the run game was really successful, and then the passing game just was not. Klubnik just did not look good.
Clemson, that second half, they didn't score a point. They also never punted.
Yeah, which is insane.
It's crazy. So, no, I'm with you.
Did you see the stat where Dabo said what Clemson's record was when they passed for 200 yards and rushed for 200 yards?
No.
When Clemson rushes and throws for 200 yards each, under Dabo, they're 58-0. In Clemson's history, they're 108-0. And they lost last
night. My gosh. So last night, So last night was the first. No, I don't think the run's over, but I think Dabo's got some work to do if he wants to pick this thing back up.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to number 3. Georgia fans should be worried about their offense.
I'm gonna say complete BS right now, just because week one, the first couple weeks of the season, you're gonna have like trial and error stuff with, especially with early. You're gonna have hiccups. So once conference play starts, give me like week 3, week 4, then I could lean the other way.
Yeah. I'm going to go some of both here. I watched a recap of that game. The biggest concern for me is the lack of urgency from Carson Beck. The one thing you can say about Stetson Bennett, like we can say pea shooter arm, all that stuff, whatever you want, but Stetson Bennett had an urgency and an excitement with him that was evident on every single play. Carson Beck does not have that, and that's fine when you're rolling out there against. I'm blanking on who they played. It was some FCS team, I think. That's fine when you're doing that. But you got South Carolina coming to town here in a couple of weeks. You're going to start playing some real SEC competition. You have to play Tennessee. You're going to have to play Kentucky, who I think is wildly underrated. If Carson Beck has not changed his urgency and his approach to the game, I think this offense could be in real trouble because there really just wasn't much of a passing game at all. So I've got some of both. We're going to go to the next one because it's along the same lines. Ohio State fans should be worried about their offense.
I think they should be worried about their offense, and the only reason I really say that confidently is because one of my close friends is a diehard Ohio State fan, and he's worried, so that makes me worried. So I'm going to say yes, that's true.
Yeah. No, this to me is a cold, hard truth. Brian Hartline has a history of underperforming as an offensive coordinator. He's not the savviest when it comes to X's and O's. You've got, I think, real quarterback concerns there at Ohio State. Marvin Harrison's the saving grace, and Tavion Henderson is a saving grace, and that's fine. But you got to understand, like, go back to that top 10. I've got Ohio State 8th. Every other team in that top 10 has players that are Marvin Harrison and Tavion Henderson quality. So having a couple of those guys is not going to be your saving grace if you're a playoff team. So I don't think Ohio State needs to be worried in like the terms of they're going to get crushed by Purdue, though they have done that before. But I do think if your goal is knock off Michigan, get to the playoff, unless that offense drastically makes some improvements between now and October, November, there's no way that's happening. All right, let's go to the next one. You're going to like this one. Colorado's win was less about Colorado and more about TCU being overrated based on what happened last year.
I will have to go it's more about Colorado because the roster was completely revamped from a 1-11 team. And for TCU's defenses, they did lose everybody. I think they only had like 18% of production back. So like they're figuring it out just as much as Colorado was, but just in a different way. So I'm gonna say it's more about Colorado.
Okay. So I'm going to go some of both here. I do think TCU losing everybody is a big problem. And I don't think it's the same team. I don't think they should have been ranked, but I do think TCU is a good team. And the fact that Colorado went into Texas Heat, put up 45 points on them, answered every single thing that TCU did, it says something. And Shadur Sanders, I mean, he to me feels every bit as good as Drake May or Caleb Williams in terms of like pro prospect. So Colorado, I think they've got some dudes. They've got their quarterback. Travis Hunter is amazing. They're going to win some games this year. All right. Duke versus UNC football will be better than Duke versus UNC basketball.
I am going to say there's truth to that because if Duke does what I think Duke can do with the schedule, and I really think the only hiccup Duke could have is maybe it's one loss with Florida State, maybe two leading up to that game. I know I'm optimistic Duke football fan, by the way, for people that do not know that's my title. So I am very optimistic and unrealistic at the same time. So if Duke has that record and UNC does take this next step, they have a defense for Drake May, then I mean it's a top 25 matchup in UNC, and Duke's going to be wanting blood after last year where Duke should have won that game. So I think, and the uncertainties with Hubert Davis in basketball too, I'm going to go with that's true.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go cold hard truth here as well. No, I was at the UNC South Carolina game Saturday night, and I got to tell you, I don't think South Carolina is a bad team. I don't even think the offensive line is bad. I think the UNC pass rush is just that darn good. I mean, they were, and I watched this thing. They gave South Carolina exotic blitz after blitz after blitz after blitz. You had no idea where they were going to blitz from. They had corners blitzing, they'd hold back corners. They'd bring safeties in, they'd hold them back. They'd blitz 3, they'd blitz 6. It was just constant. And they were in Spencer Rattler's face all night long, but that had way more to do with UNC's tremendous game plan than it did South Carolina's lack of offense. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch how Duke handles that. But the one thing Duke has that South Carolina doesn't have is a legitimate run game. That, and I mean, last year the run game was all Riley Leonard. Now you look at the run game, it's like, oh, no. South Carolina's got some running backs. They got some guard play. They're going to push you around. They're going to move the ball with the run game. So that's going to back off UNC's pass rush. But then we're going to see UNC's offense, which is really all Drake May. But I mean, goodness gracious, that kid on Saturday, he had 3 or 4 throws that I thought were Mahomes worthy. I mean, just no look passes, like reading the defense, leading receivers behind linebackers. He's unlike, I think he might be better than Caleb Williams. And I hate saying it, but he's just so darn good and fun to watch. So yeah, that game, I may go ahead and get my ticket for that tonight. That's going to be one of the best football games of the year. Yeah. All right, next one. Alabama will beat Texas by 14 or more this Saturday.
You can't go somewhere in the middle there because it's either they cover or they don't. I will go. It's in Tuscaloosa or at Texas?
In Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, give me that. It's going to be a cold hard truth.
Okay.
I think that. Yeah, I think Saban's going to want blood, so I'm going with Saban.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think Saban wants blood after last year. I think Texas didn't look great over the weekend, and I think Jalen Milroe is the real deal. Really, really good quarterback. Texas, I think they're coming in a bit overrated. I have them 14th, by the way. I do not think that's a top 10 team right now. I think they could be, but I don't think they are. Steve Sarkisian's not buttoned up in big games like this. And that Alabama team, I mean, they won like 56-7, and of course they're up by 50 points, and Nick Saban's like yelling at his coaches on the sideline. Not good enough. Yeah, I mean, Alabama's just on a different level again, so I'm not surprised by it. I think they'll crush Texas. All right, here's the last one. We talked about this earlier. The Pac-12 is better than the SEC.
I'm going to split the hairs here. I'm going to go right down the middle. It's some BS, some truth. I just think, obviously, the top of the conference, I might have to go with SEC still. I think Georgia will be fine, and Bama. I just think Bama. But the bottom of the conference, I think Stanford's better than Vanderbilt. They both actually played Hawaii, so that's kind of where I can go off of that. But Stanford actually kind of impressed me, and I mean, Cal, they look good. I know they play North Texas, but that was not supposed to be that big of a blowout. And Cal meant business. So I'm gonna split hairs and be right in the middle there.
Yeah, well, I actually, when we did our Pac-12 preview a few weeks ago, I had Cal ranked pretty high in the Pac-12. I think they're going to beat Auburn this week, much to Ben's dismay. But I'm right there with you. I think this is a sum of both. I don't think the Pac-12 has a team as good as Bama or Georgia. And I think if Oregon played Georgia on a neutral site, it'd probably be pretty similar to Oregon, Georgia last year. Maybe not quite as bad, but I do think that is there. But the Pac-12 is way deeper and way more fun to watch than the SEC. Like once you get past Tennessee and the SEC, it's a whole lot of Ole Miss and Mississippi State and South Carolina. And I mean, the Pac-12 has maybe 7 or 8 amazing quarterbacks that the SEC just doesn't have. So I think it's better in terms of play, in terms of entertainment value. I think they're giving it to you, but the SEC is going to have more championship contenders. So it is some of both. All right, hey, let's do one more. The state of North Carolina has surpassed the state of South Carolina in football. Has that happened?
Let's see. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go yes.
Oh my God.
I don't like Shane Beamer. So Shane Beamer, I am.
Oh
yeah. So I'm going, if I have to go against him, then I'm going against him.
See, Shane Beamer might be Ben's love child. Thankfully, he's not here tonight for me to pick on him.
Shane Beamer and Dabo, I'm happy that both lost. And
the state of South Carolina got absolutely annihilated this weekend. Coastal Carolina lost. South Carolina lost. Clemson lost. I think Furman is the only team in the state of South Carolina that actually won a game. I
I
think
think
Citadel lost.
Coastal had the best loss because they played well against UCLA.
They did.
They just didn't. I mean, that one DB had 3 interceptions, so at least they have like some stuff to write home about. Clemson definitely not, and South Carolina
No, not at all. Well, in South Carolina, they got to clean up their stuff too. They're going to play. I think South Carolina may play Furman this week.
all right.
Yeah, but South Carolina plays Georgia next week. So I mean, if it's not cleaned up, Georgia's going to run all over them. All right. So real quick recap. Last week on our picks, I went 4-1. Ben, however, went 2-3. So my picks, which I did have pulled up, I have no idea what's happened to them, but I had East Carolina covering against Michigan, which they barely did, but barely is good enough to win some money. Where I lost out was I had Texas San Antonio beating Houston. That did not happen, so that was ugly. Let's see. I've got this almost put up here. This is such a fourth string moment for me to be having right now. All right, here we go. UNC, I had them covering 2.5 against South Carolina. I took Fresno State on the money line at Purdue, and then I had Liberty covering 8.5 against Bowling Green. They tried their hardest to give that up, but Liberty prevailed in the end. So 4-1 with me for the week. Now, Ben, who didn't worry about the over-under at all, he just went straight up and went 2-3. He had ODU over Virginia Tech. That didn't happen. He had South Carolina over UNC. That did not happen. I can't defend him on this at all. He had West Virginia knocking off Penn State. That definitely didn't happen. He had Auburn over UMass, so he did win that one. And then he took Colorado over TCU. So he surprised us all and took that pick, which he did mention that on the podcast last week. He would be doing that. So Ben 2-3 to start the year. I am 4-1. Jordan, we're going to go with an upset alert pick. My upset alert pick this weekend is going to be Oregon going to Texas Tech. So Texas Tech is a 6.5-point dog in this game. But Texas Tech is coming off a game against Wyoming where they played a really good group of 5 team that I think has been to like 3 straight bowl games. They went to Wyoming, weird game, went into double overtime. I think Texas Tech is a really good team. I think because Tyler Show is their quarterback, previous Oregon quarterback, I think he's had this game circled. I think we're going to see Texas Tech's best effort this weekend. They're looking to rebound, not go 0-2. Oregon coming off a game where they scored 81 points. That's not realistic. So Oregon, I think, is going to get punched in the mouth early. I'm interested to see how they respond. I think they probably end up winning this one really close, but this is going to be a game I think we're going to get to the end of the day Saturday and be like, wow, Texas Tech is really giving Oregon trouble. Remember, they did this to Texas last year. This was on nobody's radar. Texas was coming off that game against Alabama. Next week, Texas Tech punches them in the mouth, gets the win. I think we're going to see Texas Tech give Oregon all they can handle.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Texas Tech is a solid pick. And I think Oregon, I think they're just due for a little slip up too. Like it's still early in the season. And I don't know, something about Big 12 offenses, man. They can surprise anybody that's out of the conference.
They absolutely can. They absolutely can. So do you have a big upset alert that you're looking at this week?
Yeah, so Cam Rising's still out, correct?
I think he's questionable right now. I don't think it's a guarantee. Yeah.
Okay, so if he's out, I like Baylor +6. I like the money line if he does not play. And I think Baylor, they lost to Texas State at home week 1, and I know that's tough. But
brutal.
But that is also one team that did the Deion Sanders and flipped the whole roster. Like that coach came in, flipped the whole roster. Their quarterback was TJ Finley, I'm pretty sure, who LSU and Auburn guy. So he's not a slouch like QB for Texas State. And then they have Power 5 receiver. Like they flipped the roster with former Power 5 guys. And so Baylor, I think I've always respected and think their head coach is a really good dude, and I think he's a good coach. And being at home, being embarrassed week 1, they're back at home against Utah. They can really set it. I like them to upset if Cam Rising is questionable, doesn't play. But if he does play, I will go. I was going back and forth here. I like Tulane. I like
Do
Tulane
you
more than Miss.
over
Yeah,
Ole Miss?
yeah, I like Tulane. I just think they something about them, man. Right when you want to knock them off because it's Tulane, they're not in a Power Five. They'll surprise you and have an impressive win. And I think that's going to be against Ole Miss at home.
Listen, that game would not shock me at all. Tulane played South Alabama over the weekend, and that game's going to run really under the radar for a lot of people. South Alabama might be the third or fourth best group of 5 team in college football. That is a really good team, and Tulane slapped them around for 4 quarters. That's the same team that knocked off USC in a big bowl game last year. They brought back just about everybody. That is not an easy game for Ole Miss to go and win at all. So I don't mind that pick at all. Now, I will tell you, I thought about taking Baylor, very much the same reason I'm taking Texas Tech, coming off that disappointing loss to Texas State. The difference is Baylor's defense did not look good, and Dave Aranda is a defensive guy. I always look at that. I think Dave Aranda, after that loss, it probably comes into the year on the hot seat. He had one good year. Last year, they fell off the map a little bit. If that's happening again this year, he's definitely going to be on the hot seat. So if they can pull off an upset against Baylor, maybe that saves them. But I would take at this point Kyle Whittingham over Dave Aranda any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Dan Lanning at Oregon, I like him. I don't know that I necessarily trust him the way I do Kyle Whittingham. So that is my only reason why I like the Texas Tech upset rather than the Baylor upset. But they're both intriguing games. I think both teams are going to have their hands full with a really unique game where all the pressure is on Utah, all the pressure is on Oregon, and they're going up against a really talented team coming off of a loss, which is always a dangerous spot to be in. So, well, look, I am super appreciative to Jordan joining us today. So you guys can find him, Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, but so at Duke FB fans for one, and then you do the Big J and Little J show too, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Cool.
Big J and Little J show also.
So what is that about? Tell me a little bit about that.
So it's a play on words. So the Big J is for journalists, Little J is for fan, because like Northwestern grads love to call themselves Big J's and as journalists. And so my co-host Connor O'Neill is the beat writer for Duke and Wake Forest for Rivals. So he works for Devils Illustrated and Deacons Illustrated. And so that's my co-host. So he's the Big J and then I'm the Little J. So there's the little play on words. And we discuss this year. We've discussed more Duke than Wake, just time constraints. He's covering 2 teams and I'm covering I coach on the side, like, so I do train basketball stuff on the side. So right now we're just focusing on Duke, and luckily it's worked out for us with week 1. So yeah, you can find a lot of Duke content when we on our podcast.
Dude, that is absolutely awesome. It's funny. I have followed Connor O'Neill for forever. I had no idea he was your co-host.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. He's a good dude, man. Well, super cool. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for joining and filling in for Ben today. You did an amazing job. No, Ben loves to say he's been demoted to 5th string. He is not yet, but he better be on Sunday, or he might. We might take it under consideration. Jordan's been fantastic. So appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, y'all can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, all that junk. Please subscribe to us. Give us a 5-star rating. That means the world. Share it with a friend so that way it's not just me, Ben, and my mom being the only 3 listeners. Maybe with Jordan joining us, he'll go back and listen and be the 4th. But we'll love for anybody else to join in as well, join in on the discussion. Y'all have a good weekend. Enjoy some